In this video, I will show you how to go from this paper napkin to this beautiful design in a coaster. Hi, I'm Deanna. Welcome to Craft It Sweetly. Thanks so much for being here. Napkins, lots of projects you can do with it. Let's get right into this one. First thing you will need for this project are paper napkins. If you haven't worked with napkins before, they generally have 3 layers to them. It's the one that has the print and then 2 additional white ones. And I do have one other video that I did how to make cards using napkins. So be sure to check that out after this video. Here is layer number 1. And then it does have one more layer here, and it helps using some kind of a pick to kind of separate the layers. Sometimes you have to try different corners and see which one works in terms of separating it. Okay, so I just did a little poking on here in order to pull this, but you can see right there you can separate that second white layer off of it. And for this one, I do kind of go around to make sure I don't rip it to start, and then you can pull the rest of it back. Alright, so now we're left with just the print portion of it. A quarter of the napkin is usually sufficient for this. Now, if you want to do the pattern a little different and do something in the middle, you obviously can do that. It doesn't have to be dividing the napkin into 4. And as you can see, this one has different hummingbirds on here, so you could technically make a set of coasters, one from each hummingbird. Now, I do want the paper that I'm cutting to be a little bigger than the tile, and it is a quarter of the napkin. And this, you could make 3 more out of that one. Once I have the tile, I will take some Mod Podge, and I'll use a brush to give it a thin coating of Mod Podge on here. And I do go back and forth one direction, and then I'll turn it and go in the other, just to make sure that I have enough Mod Podge down on the tile. And I'll also add Mod Podge to the side of the tile as well, because I'll be gluing this area down also. Once you have the Mod Podge down, then we lay down the napkin. And you want to make sure that you center it so that you have enough to go down the sides of the tile as well. Okay, once you set it down, just use some kind of a scraper to make sure that you're taking out any air bubbles, and it's completely smooth on the tile. And then this you do have to tuck down. As you do this, just be careful, the napkin has softened at this point. One of the reasons I prefer the other method is the Mod Podge kind of makes it wet as you work with it, so you can possibly rip this as you're smoothing it out. So just be careful if you are using the Mod Podge option. We need to scrape this part off, and what I like to use for this is just an X-Acto knife, and I kind of just scrape it right along the tile itself. Okay, and that's the stopping point for this. We've covered it, and the design looks like it's going on to the side of the tile as well. It's not stopping, right at the top. Okay, now I will show you the next option with doing the tile if you don't want to use Mod Podge. Another way I want to show you how to apply the napkin to the tile is using a Xyron sticker maker. And for this one, I have a couple of them. I'll do this one off camera also, just so you can see how it compares to the one that I did with Mod Podge. But for this one here, I have this pretty cool napkin. And I do have in my Etsy shop, I plan on adding some listings with an assortment of napkins. If you want to try this technique out, check that out, and you can get an assortment with various designs in it. So once I have this, I will cut this just slightly bigger than the tile because I want it to go over the edge. I'm going to use the Xyron sticker maker, and I put the napkin down. This is pretty like the napkin itself is very thin, so you have to go carefully as you put it through the machine to make sure it catches. So there's the napkin, and now the back of this is completely sticky. The one thing with this is it's slightly, because the napkin is so thin, you have to be super careful in removing this to make sure that you're not ripping the napkin. And I just started from one end to the other to release it, so that once I have this leading edge, which is extra anyway because it's going to end up underneath the tile, then you can kind of pull the whole thing off in one shot. You just want to be careful not to curl it onto itself. It looks a little messy right now, but it actually works pretty well. And to some degree I prefer this over Mod Podge. See, once you have it at this stage, you can grab the whole thing and then just apply it on the tile. And you can work out the little creases just by running your finger across it. You don't need a scraper or anything. And then when I get to this point, I just use scissors to kind of scrape off the excess, what's on the back of the tile. Now if you do have, like here it has just a little bit of creasing, you can take, at this point since it's pretty attached to it, you can take a bone folder and kind of run it across so that it's smooth on the tile. See, this had a little crease on it. It's almost like ironing it out. And with this you don't risk as much as you would with Mod Podge, because the Mod Podge will get the napkin wet. This is just sticky on the back. So this was done with Mod Podge, and then this was done with the Xyron sticker maker. Not much difference. It's more just the final product. It's more just the process of working with it. This seems to be a little easier, again, because the napkin doesn't get wet from the Mod Podge. Okay, now I have everything covered with the napkins, and at this point I'm going to resin all these tiles, and that will seal it and give it a nice finish. And I do wear gloves when working with resin. It says no odor, but you should work in a well ventilated area regardless. Okay, for the resin it's 1-to-1 ratio of these, and then I'm going to mix, I'm covering 5 tiles, and I will mix 20 milliliters of A, and then right on top of it I'm gonna do 20 milliliters of B. And then you stir the resin for about 3 minutes, and you do it slowly but continuously just to mix everything. You don't want to do it too vigorously when mixing, because then you're gonna end up with bubbles. And then the other tool that I'm using is this silicone brush, I guess it's called, but it's more, looks like a little tiny spatula, just to spread it on the side on here. If I have leftover resin, I'll usually end up pouring it in some kind of other mold. Okay, now that this has been stirred, I can start pouring it on the tiles. And you don't need a lot on a tile, you just want a thin coat. I'm doing the sides and I kind of push it from the top just to cover the sides, and then I will go back one more time over the top to make sure that that's level. Okay, that is tile number 1, and you repeat the process with the other tiles. And I'm just using some kind of support so that it's not directly on the surface. That way, if anything kind of drips down. If it looks like it has any kind of bubbles, you can use a heat gun. That will heat the resin enough to pop any bubbles. Once the resin is cured, then this is the coaster, and it gives it a really nice shine to it. On the back of this, I'm going to apply corkboard, and I get these sheets, it's Contact brand, and then I just cut it down to size. So I've cut out these, which go pretty much to the edge of the tile. And there's the pretty coaster. Easy to make. Thing that takes the longest is for resin to cure. Okay, and then I've added the cork to the back of all of these. And I did 2 of each of these so that it's a set like this. So it makes a pretty awesome gift. If you have any questions, please comment below. If you end up doing this, please join my Facebook group and post your project there. Would love to see what you create. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next project.